Hi and welcome to the Malat cookery channel. So one of our fantastic YouTube channel subscribers, Simon, has asked if I can show a decent yeast-free pizza dough recipe. So there are a lot of people with a sensitivity to yeast in their diet, so I'm hoping this video is going to help quite a few. And the spice blend we're going to be using from the Malat range today is their Italian seasoning. As usual, a full list of ingredients will be given at the end of the video, but before we have a look at those ingredients and any other equipment we're going to need for today, I just want to explain a little bit about yeast, the role that it plays within dough making, and what we can do to replicate some of the positive effects that yeast has by taking the yeast out and adding in other ingredients into the recipe. So when we add yeast into bread making, which is basically what pizza dough is, the yeast ferments, and that fermentation process creates carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide production gives the dough volume, and it's that volume that creates this light and airy structure that you see within bread. When we take yeast out of the bread recipe, what we actually end up with is almost like a slab of semi-flexible pastry. In order to create some form of volume within the dough when we take the yeast out, we have to put in or replace the yeast with an ingredient that will create some form of carbon dioxide production. So almost every single recipe that's out there for a yeast-free pizza dough recipe replaces the yeast with baking powder. Now the big issue I have with baking powder is it doesn't create nearly enough carbon dioxide production in order to come close to replicating what the bread structure should look like. So a little trick that I've been doing for a number of years in recipes where carbon dioxide production is advantageous, and something which I learned from school, probably one of the only things I remember from school, is to combine citrus powder with bicarbonate of soda. So that's how we're going to get a decent production of carbon dioxide in our recipe. It's not going to come anywhere near the amount of carbon dioxide that's produced during the fermentation process when we use yeast, but it is a lot better performing than just using baking powder. Okay, so the ingredients for today: I've got 150 grams of bread flour or strong flour. So this is going to be enough to make one fairly decent sized pizza. I've got 100 milliliters of lukewarm water. We may need slightly more or less, but I'll show you the sort of consistency of the dough that we need. I've got some tomato sauce to top the pizza with. And that's made up of about 3 tablespoons of passata, 1 tablespoon of tomato puree, and about half a teaspoon of Malat Italian seasoning. I've also got half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda and half a teaspoon of citric acid or citric powder, and then some grated mature cheddar cheese to top it. If you want to do more than one pizza, obviously we'll double up on the flour and the water, but do not double up on the bicarbonate of soda and the citric acid. This is sort of the optimum amount that you'll need to generate this carbon dioxide. If you actually go more, so if we add say a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda and a teaspoon of citric acid, what will happen is it will produce too much carbon dioxide, and the gluten within the flour will be unable to retain its strength and hold the dough together, and the dough will just collapse. So it actually has an adverse effect if you go over the prescribed amount. So keep it to half a teaspoon of each. I'm also going to need a rolling pin and a pizza tray as well. So first thing we need to do is we take the flour, we add our bicarbonate of soda into that, and also our citric acid, and then we just mix that through thoroughly. So one thing about the citric acid is used in wine and beer making. So you can buy citric acid from really anywhere that stocks wine and beer making kits. So this is from Wilko's or Wilkinson's in the UK. Costs about £1, so it's not that expensive. Also Boots, the chemist in the UK, will sell it if they sell the wine making kits, or you can buy this online, so it's fairly easy to get hold of. Okay, so that's the dry ingredients mixed in. Before we add our water, what I've done is actually prepared the work surface in order to be able to roll out the dough. So I've lightly floured a clean work surface, and I've got the rolling pin ready as well, because we need to work fairly quickly, not rush with it. But the thing about the carbon dioxide production from the citric acid and the bicarbonate of soda, it kind of peaks after 3 or 4 minutes, levels off, and then it starts to decline. So if we take our time mixing the dough and then we leave it, by the time we've rolled the dough out, most of the carbon dioxide production has ceased, and we're not going to get the rise that we're looking for, the volume within the dough that we really want. So if we can be as quick as we possibly can in mixing this and rolling it out, we'll get a much better product at the end of the cooking process. So now we've mixed all the dry ingredients in, I just want to add the water a little bit at a time and just mix this through by hand. So we've now mixed this dough together. We've got about 15 or 20 millilitres of water left. So as I said, that's just a guide. The water, we then take it from the bowl and then place it onto the floured surface. And just ensure that that comes together as a ball. Okay, so now I've brought that together. Just a little bit of flour onto the rolling pin, and we just need to roll this out to about 2 or 3 millimeters thick. Okay, so once you've done that, we just need to transfer this onto the pizza tray. Because this is quite an old pizza tray, I've just lightly floured the bottom. So once we've placed the dough into the pizza tray, got it centered, next thing we need to do is just to go around the edge and just pinch a little bit of the dough in, and this is going to create our crust. So once we've pinched in around the edge, we leave this to stand now for about 10 minutes, and that'll just give that citric acid and bicarbonate of soda time to generate a little bit more carbon dioxide before we put the toppings on and place it into an oven. It's a good opportunity now to put the oven on to 190 degrees centigrade and leave that to come up to temperature. Okay, so this has been stood now for about 10 minutes. I don't think the camera will pick this up, but I can see carbon dioxide bubbles just under the surface, just appearing all over. This is never going to be as good as a yeast based dough, but it's certainly going to be a lot better than the other recipes that are out there that just use baking powder. So I'm just placing our homemade tomato sauce on the top. So that's the sauce on. I've just left a perimeter around the edge so we get a nice crust, as you would with any pizza making. And then this is just going to be a really simple pizza. So I'm just adding the cheddar cheese on the top. Again, this video is more about the production of the yeast-free pizza dough rather than making sort of the perfect pizza. Okay, so the oven's up to temperature 190 degrees centigrade. Going to be cooking this. It'll take around 20 minutes to cook in the oven, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the results. Okay, so the pizza's now cooked. I also did a smaller pizza using just baking powder as a comparison. Now I'm sure I could have done a bit better. Well, I'm hoping I could have done better with the baking powder, but it's just really just for comparison purposes. So when we look at baking powder, the actual base itself is quite flat. There's no volume to it at all. There's no volume in the crust. Not very appetizing at all. When we look at the citric acid and bicarbonate of soda, so let's go for this side. Hopefully that the camera can actually pick that up. So we do have almost like a bread structure within the dough itself. We've got this honeycomb. As I said before, it's never going to be anywhere near what you can get with a yeast dough, but it is getting there. So I'd be quite happy with that. We've even got some honeycomb within the base itself. So again, it gives a nice crust. Let me just take another piece of crust off to show you. So we do have almost like a bread structure within there. So this is, again, this is the citric acid and bicarbonate of soda working together to produce these carbon dioxide bubbles. So I'm quite happy with that. Definitely a better result than just using baking powder. So there you go, a really decent yeast-free pizza dough recipe. Please subscribe to the channel, and as usual, if you've enjoyed this particular video, hit that like button and switch on your notifications for more videos coming out, because there are going to be plenty. Thank you very much for watching.